Fidgeting, disruption, low-level behaviors are the most annoying. So what do we do about them? How can we stop them? And what is the neuroscience behind low-level behaviors? Let's take a look. I'm Danielle Douglas, a behaviour and neuroscience specialist, and I am supporting over 87 countries around the world and 60,000 people making behaviour management easy using neuroscience. Our behaviour planner was Education Book of the Year 2025 finalist, and we've just been nominated for another award. If you haven't already got our free resources, then make sure you do. And we've got a behaviour library here on YouTube. You might also find this video interesting. The Behaviour Brains book is out now, and this is a children's book that can help them understand and learn about their behaviour brains, navigating their brains and their behaviour. Low-level disruption is the number one stressor for teachers, and I get so many calls and messages about low-level behaviour. What do we do about it? Where does it come from? And what is the neuroscience that underpins it as well? Tapping, chatting, fidgeting, low-level behaviours. What can we do about it? What is the neuroscience and what does it say? So where do these low-level behaviours come from, and what is happening within the child's brain that causes these low-level behaviours? The low-level behaviours, the chatting, the fidgeting, the moving, all come from the amygdala. This is the part of the brain that is the fight, flight or freeze part of the brain. It is the body's alarm system, and it is telling you and the child that something is not quite right. This is the part of the brain that is signalling to the child that they have a need. The amygdala is seeking some sort of feedback, or it is signaling that they need regulating. There is something going on with that child at that time that has a need that is not quite being met yet. If you would like to know more information about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, understanding children's behaviour brains, you can either find that in the Behaviour Brains children book or the adult version, Understanding the Children's Brain, Amygdala versus the Prefrontal Cortex. Should we ignore them? So I get teachers all of the time, and they will come and observe my lessons, or I will go and observe them within the classroom, and they always ask me about those low-level behaviours. What should we be doing, or should we ignore those low-level behaviours when they are happening? So what are we teaching them, and what is going on with their brain? If you think about what we've just said, the amygdala is the part of the body that is the fight, flight, freeze. That is the emotional part of the brain. This is signaling that children need regulating, or there is something not quite right. So if we ignore the amygdala, if we ignore the children's behaviours, we are almost telling the child that their need at that time is not significant enough for it to be met with a response. This is like having an itch. If you've got an itch but you don't scratch it or don't do anything about it, what happens? This itch will completely consume you, and it's all you will be able to think about. When children are in the amygdala, so they're in the emotional part of the brain, they are not thinking, listening, processing, which means that when they are sitting in that low-level disruption brain, regardless of what is happening, they are not going to listen or learn until that need is met. Another thing that happens is behaviours are cemented or confirmed over time. So when children do something negative or positive, the feedback on that then feeds into what they do within the future. And this is the same. When children are showing low-level behaviours and we don't respond, it signals to the children and their brain they need to do something more significant to get your attention. So the low-level behaviours that we are ignoring will be triggered in the child's mind to tell them that you will not respond to their need. They need to escalate their behaviours if they would like to get a response. This is bad news. This then means that children's low-level behaviours become high-level behaviours because they think they need to escalate the behaviour to get their need met. So if, for example, there's a child in your classroom and they are showing low-level behaviours, their brain is in the amygdala. They are trying to communicate a message with themselves or with you that needs resolving, or they need stimulating, or they need some sort of regulation. Now, if we ignore that behaviour, it signals to the child that they need to escalate the behaviour to get their need met. But also the child is in the amygdala. So regardless of whether you keep teaching or you keep ignoring that behaviour, the children are not listening, learning, or processing. So there is no point continuing with the teaching or whatever you are doing, because children are in the wrong brain for them to learn or listen anyway. So what can we do about it? This is almost like the itch, but I want you to think about you. When you are not well, what do? We take medication or we go to the doctors. We don't leave it. If you've got a headache, then you will do something about it. You might drink water, you will take paracetamol. If there is something going on, then we need to address that before something else happens or before we get worse. The best thing that you can do for when children are displaying low level behaviors is to acknowledge and redirect. Now, this doesn't mean acknowledge by stopping the lesson and saying, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" There are ways that we can acknowledge and redirect, but what will happen is when we acknowledge the need, we signal to the children that is important. We signal to them that we understand that there is something wrong. It needs regulating. We also signal to them that they don't need to escalate the behaviors to get a response. And we can switch the brain from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, which means they are then listening and ready to learn. So alongside this acknowledging and redirecting, we are switching the brain from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. We've got more information about this. So if you would like more information about how to switch the brain, see the Children's Behaviour Brains book or Understanding Children's Behaviour Brains. What we need to do is we need to switch from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, and we can do that in a few different ways. We can question, distract, or problem solve. We can also use exercise, but at this moment in time, unless you are adding movement breaks into your classroom, it's probably not appropriate. We also have videos about how to successfully implement movement breaks within the mainstream classroom, and you can see these on YouTube too. A few ways that we would acknowledge but redirect the low-level behaviours is within the classroom. I always had a little boy who would struggle with the low-level disruptions and behaviours, usually because he had core muscle problems, so sitting for him was a bit of an issue. So he would be fidgeting to kind of regulate himself. But just to check in, redirect and re-engage the prefrontal cortex, I would do a few things. Often I would just look at him and signal to him, and are you okay? So it was like a look of empathy, to which he was usually thumbs up or thumbs down. If it was thumbs down, then we'd have to do something about it, usually add a movement break in. We can also signal those behaviours. You can do a look, a thumbs up. Often we would use visuals. So we would use visual representations. We talk about using visual representations in terms of pictures and visual prompts for children. This is because 90% of information processed by the brain is visual. Children will 600,000 times faster process images than they will words or pictures. Words or writing. So we will use pictures to signify to the children what we are expecting them to do and to ask them if they are okay. This means that very quickly within your teaching, you can just point to a visual which asks the child if they're okay. It doesn't mean you have to stop, you don't have to go off track, and it doesn't need a conversation. You can simply, whilst you are teaching, look at the child, point to the "are you okay" or behaviour expectation, and carry on. Remember, we don't want children to think that they need to escalate behaviours to get a response from you. We want them to know, understand, and build trust that we are going to listen to and help them with their behaviour needs. We also use something called quick behaviour reset cards, and this helps switch the brain from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. The quick behaviour reset cards will help the children to disengage the amygdala and engage the prefrontal cortex. If you haven't seen our quick behaviour reset cards, you can check them out or make your own. If you would like to know more information about behaviour management or neuroscience, you're in the right place. I'm Danielle Douglas. Let's talk behaviour.